Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by former guide and Clean the Dream co-founder, Brandon Kramer. He dropped in to share his fly fishing journey, why the Dream is so special to him, and of course, details about the upcoming Clean the Dream event on August 27th. If you'll be in the Denver area, you should definitely check it out. I'll be there. All the details are in the show notes. But before we get to interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And a shout out to this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Artisan Angler. If you're looking for a better way to organize your flies, tippet, and tools, you should check out the fly trap at artisananglerllc.com. I've dropped the link in the show notes. They sell direct through Amazon, so you get prime shipping and free returns. It doesn't get any easier than that. Make your time on the water more productive and check out the fly trap today. Now, on to our interview. Well, Kramer, welcome to the Articulate Fly.
Well, tight lines and salutations, Marvin. It's a pleasure to be here. Long-time listener, first-time participant.
There you go. Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation, and we have a tradition on the Articulate Fly. I'd like to ask all of our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Well, that's kind of a personal question, just getting started like this, don't you think?
Yeah, I ask it of everybody, and we started off the top.
Okay. All right. Well, I've thought a little bit about this, and, I couldn't tell you exactly when my earliest fishing memory is, but the one that kind of sticks out in my mind right now, because I happen to be in Michigan right now where I grew up, and there was this little private lake in my grandparents' town, and I used to go and live with them for the summer sometimes. And I used to love fishing, and this private lake was owned by Mr. Dankovich, and he went to my grandparents' church. I'm like, oh, I want to go out there and fish. They're like, well, you got to ask him. And I was definitely single-digit years. I don't know exactly how old I was, but I'm like, well, how do I ask him? I'm like, well, he's going to be at church this Sunday. You can ask him there. And I remember being like nervous about it, but I was like, I wanted to fish that water so bad that I was like, oh, I'm definitely going in. And so definitely approached him at church and then got the green light to fish that water. And his grandson, Eric Johnson, actually works for Scientific Anglers today. So he's actually stayed in the industry as well. And I grew up fishing with him in the summertime and whatnot. And now that I'm back in Michigan this weekend, I'm actually going to go back and fish with him for the first time in like 30 years. So really come full circle on that one and looking forward to it. But that's definitely one of my earliest fishing memories, and the bass fishing in that little private lake was unbelievable.
Super neat. And so when did you come to the dark side of fly fishing?
So that didn't happen until after I got out of the Marine Corps and I moved to Colorado. So that would have been, I think in 2003 or 4. I think I moved there in 2003 and then picked up a fly rod in 2004. I'm pretty sure that this is my 18th season with a fly rod in hand dedicated. Like I haven't touched my spinning rod in 18 years.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm like scared to touch my spinning gear because I'm afraid it's going to mess up my cast.
Yeah, we can't have that. You're on one side or the other. It's kind of like a hard line in the sand for me. I get a lot of friends that, they go both ways, but I don't know. Now that I've seen the light, it's kind of hard for me to go back.
Yeah, got it. So, as you made that transition when you moved to Colorado and you got out of the Marine Corps, who are some of the folks that you met that mentored you on your fly fishing journey, and what did they teach you?
Yeah, Colorado's a good melting pot for a lot of things. But for fly fishing, it's nice just to be immersed in the culture. If you want to go down the rabbit hole on an activity like fly fishing, you can really go pretty deep with that. So I would say Peter Byrne was one of the first people that I met actually out on the Dream Stream, and he was a longtime fly fishing guide. He's an old British guy, and he guided for many years. And I just bumped into him one day, and he just had an eye for spotting fish like I've never seen before. And he was one of the first people that really started getting me dialed in on how to sight fish waters like the Dream Stream on the South Platte in Colorado. And then probably a year or two later, that's when I actually linked up with Landon. I took a guide trip with him, and he really helped me get dialed in on the art of sight fishing. And once I saw that you could actually hunt these things and stalk big fish, like it was game over. I felt like it was kind of like bow hunting with a fly rod. And just to be able to get in close, see the fish, watch their mouth open and close on the flies and set the hook. And after that, it was game over. Like that was all I wanted to do. So I would say probably Peter Byrne and Landon Mayer were definitely the two biggest influences that really lit the fire for fly fishing. Like it was cool even before I had met them, but they were the ones that kind of helped me see the light to see how far you could really go with it.
Got it. And so when did you get the guide bug?
So that would have been post-college. I felt like after I took that trip with Landon, we kind of joke around about that today because it was years later. I think I came back to him like 10 years later and I was looking for a reference to try and get in with one of the local shops. And it was probably 12 years after I took the trip with him, 10, 12 years or something like that. And so he gave me a reference to get into one of the fly shops and we joke around and say, like after that day, like, oh, you like this stuff? That's good. Now go practice for a decade and come back and see me and I'll have some work for you. And then after I started working for the shop, then I started actually guiding for Landon Mayer fly fishing. So it was kind of fun to come full circle on that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What shop did you work in?
So that was the South Platte Fly Shop up in Woodland Park, Colorado. As you're going up 24, they're right on the right-hand side. And that was the first shop that I worked for. And I worked for them for 3 or 4 seasons. And then for Landon Mayer fly fishing for a couple of seasons. And then I was on to finance the next chapter of my fly fishing career because I had to get a better job so I could afford all this stuff.
Yeah, there you go. So would you say Landon was kind of the primary guy that kind of mentored you on your guide journey?
Yeah, and him and Peter, because Peter actually worked at the shop as well. So I did a introduction to fly fishing class with him, and it was nice to be side by side with him as a mentor as well, teaching the classes. But I would say the two of them definitely were major influences over my angling career.
Yeah, and so does anything in particular kind of jump out to you that they showed you or taught you?
It's really, I would say, more than anything, what makes me effective on those waterways is the sight fishing, is being able to like grow a fish out of an area that, you might have just walked over before. And both of those guys, especially Landon, have just got an eye for, now that I've been doing this for, 18 years and really not just doing it, but studying it. I feel like my skills are at the highest they've ever been. And still, if you go for a walk with him on the water, he'll be like, oh, there's one. I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that, until they point their rod tip right at the tail or something. You're like, oh, I didn't even see that. So there's always another level to take it to. But those two both are still teaching me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It makes me think about like going bone fishing and you're waiting and the guide says, do you see that stingray? And I'm like, I do not.
Right. Yeah. It's completely invisible.
Yeah. So
the untrained eye a lot of times.
Yeah. So I then walk behind that guy the rest of the day so I don't step on one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think? Because there are a couple of things I always like to ask guides and former guides. What do you think's the secret to being a good guide?
I asked somebody that question when I first got into guiding because I want to be good at it no matter what I'm doing. And I don't even remember who told me this, but they said it's about creating the experience. So not only is it knowing your waterway and being able to maybe show another experienced angler some tricks, and maybe maybe they have way more experience than you do, but just being able to give them the tour of your waterway and knowing that really well, like, oh, behind this rock, there's always one sitting here if nobody's been through here before. So I think that's probably the first step, but it's also creating the experience, like knowing the history of the area. And, maybe it's a terrible day and the water's been beat up and the conditions aren't right. But if you can give them maybe a little history lesson about what they're looking at or something that had happened on that ground, I think that can be pretty special. And then the other thing I've always tried to do is just, along with creating that experience, try to provide like a good lunch if there is one. I always stock the cooler with a variety of beverages, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, and also try to get some pictures. I think, if there's a couple there, try and get a group picture, maybe at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Because I think, as other guides would agree, there might not be a grip and grin. So at least if you can have like a nice backdrop with a picture of the two people or the team that you're fishing with that day, I think that can be a nice memory for somebody to take along.
Yeah, very neat. And, I also always like to ask guides and former guides to share what they think the biggest misconception they think folks have about the life of a fishing guide.
I can remember when I was guiding and people were like, "Oh, you're a fly fishing guide. That's great. You just get paid to fish all day." I'm like, I don't think you guys understand what a guide does. The only thing the guide does is tie knots and untie knots. And if you take pictures, if you should be so lucky. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is they just think that you're out in the water like you are fishing with your buddies on a Saturday. And that is certainly not the case, because it's definitely a lot of work, keeping, especially as somebody that's a novice or that maybe is not a proficient caster, trying to get them into the opportunities that you see, like they might be easy for yourself, but not so much for other people. And one of the things that guiding really taught me, probably more than anything else that translates into my life today, would be the communication issue. Because I found that I would be on the water talking to somebody like, all right, cast up in front of that rock, and they would be casting like to the back of it. And when I really analyzed what I was saying, like if you're not, familiar with fly fishing, and, the front's where the water's coming in my opinion, like upstream. But if it was a rock on the ground, you'd say the front of the rock is probably the side you're looking at. And when one of my clients told me that, I was like, oh, that does make sense. But in this world, that's the front side is the side that's upstream, and so it really made me take a step back and think about what am I saying, or do I need to say the wrong thing to get the right answer or the behavior that I want? And it just kind of disarmed me a little bit and maybe take a step back and think about not what makes most sense in my head, but to one of the clients or to a newbie.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It makes me think about kind of what I always try to do when I get in a boat to go saltwater fishing, and we start talking about like, what do you think is 60 feet, and pick 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock or whatever, so that we can kind of get that, distance and angle worked out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So so when you were guiding, did you exclusively guide in South Park, or did you guide in other places in Colorado?
Just South Park. Really, the South Platte River drainage was where I spent most of my time. And I would say the majority of that time was spent on the Dream Stream section of the South Platte, and then some in the Deckers section. And then I did do a little bit of guiding for a short time in the Park City, Utah area as well.
Yeah, got it. And I know you're particularly fond of the Dream Stream. Can you share for our listeners that don't live or haven't been to the South Park area, what makes it such a special piece of water?
Sure. I would say, the Dream Stream, is just a section of water. And I can remember hearing about that, like when I first started fishing in Colorado. I'm like, I want to see this Dream Stream. But when you get there, it took me a while to warm up to it, because it's in a huge open valley. There's not a tree on the river. So it's in a large meadow, and like aesthetically, at face value for me compared to other places in Colorado, it wasn't really like that special to look at. But the early sunrises and sunsets are incredible out there. And then that waterway, everybody's like, oh, it's the Dream Stream. It must be great all the time. Well, sometimes that dream is a nightmare, is what I'll tell you, because the best days ever with a fly rod in hand are in a Dream Stream. But the worst days ever with a fly rod in hand are definitely on a Dream Stream. There's been so many days where the wind is blowing out there and it's, sub-zero temperatures, and you're out there trying to, make something happen. And it's not always as dreamy as it's made out to be, but definitely some of the best days I've ever had with a fly rod in hand.
Very neat. And, you've been lucky enough to be able to fish it over quite a few years. How has it changed?
I think I've seen it change quite a bit over the years. And I think probably the first thing that has made it change is I think some of the water flows, as the Denver has expanded, and just the Front Range of Colorado in general. I think there's more water restrictions, and it's hard to get the flows that would support that river the best there. So that can be a little more sporadic, at times, or low flows in certain times of the year when the bugs are coming off and there should be more fish there and there's not. So I've seen some of that. And I think the other, it's not really even a problem, but, Colorado, it has 5.7 million people all trying to do the same thing. And you can't blame anybody for it. Everybody's there, with the same, kind of passions and energy to do the outdoor activities. But because of that, some of our favorite places suffer. And the Dream Stream, I definitely think is one of those. And there's just so many people that love that area and want to go up there every year. And I forget how many visitors visit the 11-mile and Spinny Mountain Reservoir state parks around there every year, but it's to the tune of hundreds of thousands. And I think I had definitely seen the waterway suffer a little bit because of that. Because I feel like back in the old days, it was always popular, but not like it is today.
Got it. And I know that, along with Landon, you co-founded the Clean the Dream event. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of the event?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was, this was something that spawned really when I was guiding out there all the time. There was kind of the infancy of like what I would call the migration of, people coming to Colorado and it really watching the sport ramp up. And through that, so many people have just come out there. I was starting to see a lot more trash, a lot more foot traffic. It's just little things like leaders blowing around in some of the parking lots and stuff like that, and it's so hard to get up a lot of this micro trash and things of that nature. So there wasn't you'd see people like with a net over their shoulder, sometimes carrying out water bottles and, other junk that they've found on the riverbanks. But there wasn't a focused cleanup that was like an annual event where every year we come together in a certain day and everybody in the community kind of participates in that. And I just felt like it was needed, and not really knowing how to get that going. I was a guide and I was a regular out there, but I didn't have the inertia to get that started. And that was one of the reasons where I brought Landon on board. Like I call him the Sandman, because he makes all your dreams come true on the Dream Stream. And he literally spends more days out there than anybody else. But I just, with his charismatic personality and just his inertia with the industry, I knew if I combined forces with Landon that we could really make this a powerful event. And I've been thankful that I didn't try and tackle it by myself, because there's just too much to do. And really when I look at it, like the success of Clean the Dream Stream is really, I have to attribute that to Landon Mayer and all the key volunteers that keep coming back every year.
Yeah, very neat. And can you give us a little bit more detail if someone comes out to help? What exactly do they do and what does the day look like?
Sure. So the day starts off at the Gauging Station parking lot. And for anybody that has been there, that's going to be like the lower lot that the little, where the bridge is, and the little shack that holds the gauging station. So we meet there at 8 a.m. On Saturday morning. And, I think there's a misconception a lot of times. We're like, well, I don't know if I just want to go out and spend my Saturday picking up trash, but it's really, it's a big event. It's a big party. For me, it's a reunion of anglers that I only get to see maybe once a year. And it's the only time that I ever get to see all these people collectively. So in the morning where we're getting going, kind of doing registration and getting people oriented to the area and give you a map of what area that we still need people to go to. You get a trash bag and we have free donuts and OJ and coffee there in the morning. And then a raffle ticket in the afternoon. So once we know where we're sending people out, we send them out, and then we'll have a drop dead time of say 1 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever we set up that day. And then everybody stages all their trash and piles that up. And as that's coming in, people keep gathering. And then we do a lunch, and that's provided by Black Bear Diner in Colorado Springs. And they've been a major sponsor for us every year with the food. So we're very thankful for that. So we'll gather everybody up, do a little lunch, and then we try and mound up all the trash, and then we get everybody together for a group photo. And then after that, it's just kind of relaxing, talking with folks, and then we start the raffle. And with all the very generous sponsorship that we've gotten over this event, I've been blown away with how that's built over the years, and all the stuff that not only the local shops are willing to give, but other sponsors in the industry. And it really just becomes a really fun event throughout the day. And the idea that you can go out and get, a donut in the morning, a lunch, and maybe go home with a Yeti cooler in hand for picking up some trash. And then if you want to stick around afterwards and fly fish, and a lot of people usually do, like, that seems like a pretty good day to me.
Yeah, it does sound like a pretty good day. And as you mentioned, you've been really lucky to get strong support from the angling community. Can you share with us maybe some of the notable brands and volunteers that are associated with the event?
Sure. So some of the volunteers are obviously myself, Landon, and Scott, who you interviewed before, Scott's father. And then I'm reluctant to say the names because there's so many names that I'd be leaving out. But we just have gotten so much positive response from the community to come out. Everybody just kind of joins with that. But some of the notable sponsors, I would say Yeti has been one of our biggest sponsors. They always send in, a bunch of swag and then a bunch of coolers. Winston, Scientific Anglers, Smith Sunglasses, and so many more that are eluding me right now. But it's been pretty impressive to see everything that shows up, because it's a whole truck full of stuff when it's set up before we start that raffle. So I feel like the street credit is out there. You're like, oh, you go there and pick up a bag of trash, and you might go home with a $900 fly rod.
Yeah. Well, and I'll make it easier for you too, because folks, if you go look, and I'll drop this in the show notes at the bottom of the poster, I think there are probably 15 or 16 logos for all the sponsors for the event.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Fish Pond's been a huge sponsor for the event since the beginning as well.
Yeah. And so, to get to more details, this year, when is the event and where can folks get more information?
Yeah. So this year is going to be Saturday, August 27th. At the gauging station parking lot at 8 a.m. And for more information, you can always go to landonmirrorflyfishing.com. You can follow us at Clean the Dream Stream on Instagram. And you can also follow me at my friend Kramer on Instagram, or Whiskey Riffle is Scott's handle on Instagram. And those are probably the biggest avenues for communication of what's going on that. I would say follow Clean the Dream Stream on Instagram.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, right, folks don't need to register in advance. They can show up and they can work for an hour. They can work all day. Whatever they have to give on that day is great, right?
Absolutely. Whatever capacity you have, I would just encourage you to come out, see what it's all about. And it's not just a fly fisherman's event. We have a lot of families that come out, and actually, I think one of the kids won the rod vault, the river quiver last year. We're like, oh, come on, you're not even going to have a license, a driver's license for 10 years. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, it's definitely a family oriented event.
Yeah, and people don't really need to bring anything really other than bug spray and maybe a good pair of work gloves, right?
Yeah, a pair of work gloves. We usually provide some medical grade gloves, just for picking up nasty trash. But a lot of times I'm dumbfounded every year. Every year I'm like, oh, okay, we've gotten all the tires out of here, and every year there are more tires come out of there. So a pair of work gloves for handling barbed wire or some of the sheet metal that gets blown around in South Park would be advisable for sure.
Yeah, and I'll drop links to all that stuff in the show notes and kind of help remind people what they need to bring and what they don't need to bring. And, Kramer, before I let you go, you want to let folks know if there's anything else you have to share?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on another river cleanup in North Idaho right now. So in Wallace, Idaho on September 10th. Time is still to be determined, but I would imagine we're going to settle down on an 8 or 9 o'clock start time at the Wallace High School in Wallace, Idaho, to clean up the the section of river that runs right through town there. So this will be the first cleanup and maybe the last, I guess, just depending on how much, we can get done on that day. But it won't be as robust as Clean the Dream Stream as far as sponsorships go, but this is the first year. So they always start out a little slower and then build the inertia with time. So I hope to see everybody at both of them or one of them, or, if you can't make it this year, definitely mark the calendar for it next year.
And if folks want to find more information about your cleanup in Idaho, where should they look?
Yeah, so that one's still under construction, but right now, the person who's putting that on told me that they just made a Facebook page that's Wallace River Cleanup, and you should be able to find information there.
Yeah, and I'll drop that in the show notes. And I think you mentioned, landandmayerflyfishing.com, Clean the Dream on Instagram. Obviously, your Instagram handle, my friend Kramer, Land and Mayer Fly Fishing on Instagram, and then Whiskey Riffle. Anywhere else folks should look if they want to stay up to date on Clean the Dream?
Not that I can think of, but if something rings a bell later, I'll definitely give you a call to put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm really looking forward to meeting you towards the end of the month, and thanks so much for spending some time with me.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, if you're going to be in the Denver area on August 27th, please plan on swinging by the Clean the Dream event. All the details are in the show notes. Tight lines, everybody.